Now we're going to talk a little bit about Wekinator and time. So I really like this picture because it shows the sort of time blur that you get from a camera exposure. So you can sort of see the rotating Ferris wheel and all the sort of amusement park rides here. So that's what we're going to think about. What's going on with things that depend on time and Wekinator? So the first place to start is, what have we done so far? What does that look like? And if you think about, we've got our inputs over here, our Wekinator model, and our output. And what we can do so far is we can take an input, so here the X and Y cursor positions, and that input is in a particular spot. It sends that data, in this case 523, 240, to Wekinator. Wekinator, based on those inputs, can classify it as, in this case I'm just making a real simple right side or left side classifier. So right side is over here, and it all depends on exactly what the value of that input is at the particular time. So if the input is over here, it classifies it as right side. If the input is over here, it classifies to the left side. And the key thing is that it only depends on the current value. So here's that very simple model running, right side, right side. But based on what we know so far, there's no way to tell Wekinator to learn something about, let's say I wanted to move this in a circle. According to Wekinator, that's just left side moving over, or right side moving over to the left side, back to the right side. There's no information about sort of the path of that circle that I'm drawing, because all that Wekinator knows is what's the current value. So let's see how we can change that so we can actually get at these sort of more interesting time-dependent things, which we'll call gestures. For a gesture, if I wanted to take my hand and use the webcam to recognize a wave gesture, it's about, my hand starts on the right, moves back to the left, and then moves back to the right. It's about that whole sort of motion that we need to recognize. So the model that we can use in Wekinator is called the dynamic time warping model. And it sort of compares how the inputs vary over time. The way this works is that if I think about my waving gesture, I can do a wave that's starts my hand here, moves sort of slowly and smoothly from right to left and then back. Or I could do a sort of herky, jerky wave where I go like that, and then come back sort of, quickly again. And as long as my hand does the same sort of path, the same sort of motion, left, right, or right, left, and then back, I should recognize that as the same gesture. So this gesture, no matter how exactly I move my hand, is a distinct gesture from going in a circle like this. So that's the way this dynamic time warping model works, is that it tries to sort of just compare the gestures as gestures and not worry about exactly how quickly you did the gesture, or if you did the first half fast and the second half slow. It tries to compare those gestures as accurate a way as it can. The example let's use to look at this dynamic time warping is using the Wekinator machine palm model as our input, and we're just going to display some text as the output. And the goal is to train Wekinator to recognize our hand in front of the webcam moving in a circle motion, which is going to be gesture 1, and moving the hand away from the camera like that, which is gesture 2. And this just gives us another sort of unique way of interacting with our machine learning and AI models, so that we can sort of trigger things that happen just when we finish a gesture, which could be useful in some of your projects. That could be something interesting to explore. So let's get started here. The Palm model, this is in this program called Wekinator Machine that I wrote. That's got a lot of different interesting examples that you could potentially use for your project here. We're going to go towards the palm tracking one. It's similar to the sort of processing examples, a little bit different, but here it's got this OSC control. So we've got the inputs, port 6648, just like normal. We'll start it. It's sending 4 inputs to WEC inputs, and I can sort of start the hand tracker here. I can go in and set up Wekinator, so here it is. It'll track my hand on the screen there. Now, when I go to look at this in Wekinator here, I need to set up the correct number of inputs, so 4, because this is 4 inputs. And for the outputs, I want just one output, and it's going to be dynamic time warping. The again, 5 gesture types is fine. So now I've got this, and the way this works is that for training here, it's a little bit different. You have to hold down the button to train. So I'm going to try to make this so you can see everything as clearly as possible here. So the way this works is that to train, I have to click and hold this plus button down. So here I'm going to do my circle, click and hold, and then do my circle motion. And then let go when I'm done doing the gesture. So I'll do that a few times. Faster. Go real fast at the beginning, and then real slow, or vice versa. I'm just going to do a few different examples. We'll see how well this works. Then for gesture 2, this is the one where I'm going to start with my hand real close to the camera, and then pull it out. And I'll just do that a couple different ways. Go sort of slowly here, or go quickly at the beginning and then slow. Just try a few different types. Now I've trained a little bit. I can click, there's no separate train button here. It's sort of training all the time in this mode. Then to try it out, we can just click run. So I'll click run. So yeah, let's start running and we can see how well this works. So I've got my hand here, and what it's doing here on the screen here is it's showing how well the gesture matches each of these with this little bar. So that's sort of a running track of how close of a match I have. So let's do my pull back. You can see that this arrow went up a little bit when I did that. And if I do a circle, this one goes up a little bit. Now the trick with this dynamic time warping model is that we have this match threshold down here at the bottom that we can use to control how good of a match we need in order to actually have it trigger the output. So if I move it down a little bit, let's see if I can get a match. And when the green indicator lights up, that's when we get a match and when it will send a value to the output. So if I bring my output back up, it sent an output 2 message right then when it did that. So pull my hand back. That time it didn't trigger, but here, yep, there's a trigger and it sends that message as output 2. Now let's see if we can trigger output 1. Go in a nice circle motion. Not quite. Not quite. That was pretty close, but I could reduce the threshold a little bit more and see if I can get that to send. Yep, there it goes. So, and you see it triggered number 2 there as well. So this one's a little bit trickier to get exactly right. It's definitely a little bit more finicky than some of the other models. So you have to sort of mess around with this a little bit to see if you can get a good match in order to be able to sort of reliably trigger those gestures. In my case, I'd probably want to do a little bit more training with output 1, do a few more circles to get it to better recognize the sort of circle motions that I make.